So this is a part of the Sicha of Parshas Devarim, which happened to come out on Tisha B'Av. It was a Tisha B'Av Nidche, it was a Shabbos, and Tisha B'Av was pushed off for Sunday. And one of the things that the Rebbe spoke on that Sicha in Tafshin Memches, 1988, was about the concept of the transformative nature of the Geula. So we will begin in the second column. Originally, he speaks about the ideas about the beginning of our Parsha. It speaks about Be'ever HaYarden, how the Yidden were across the Yarden when Moshe Rabbeinu spoke Chumash Devarim, but it doesn't identify the exact location. Across the Yarden, the Rebbe earlier in the Sicha spoke about, could be anywhere. It could be practically the full length of Eretz Yisrael could be across the Yarden. But we know at the end of Chumash Bamidbar that it says that it was yesterday, what we read yesterday in the Torah, that was Ba'arvis Moav. It was in the plains of Moav. So the question is, why is that not being identified? And the Rebbe spoke about this, and the Rebbe is going to explain it by explaining the spiritual idea of what the Geula has to accomplish. So again, left side of your page. Amar Azal, as the members Masois in Midbar zijn gewen achonnet to the Knisel Eretz Yisrael. The Chazal said that the 42 journeys in the wilderness that we spoke about the last week's Parshas Masei was a preparation to entering Eretz Yisrael. The dogma, the Golus, similar to exile, was the achonnet to the Geula, which is a preparation for the redemption. So that the future redemption should be an everlasting redemption that will never be followed by exile. It's not even possible that there could be golus after the future redemption. This is specifically through the preceding avodah in the time of exile. So exile is a precursor and it's a preparation, and it ensures that the Geula will be in such a type of way that there's no possibility that there should be a Golus ever again. See, and the Rebbe says in the footnote, on footnote 21, he says an interesting point. If there wouldn't have been the Geula, if following all the lengthy avodah of Golus, even though it says V'Suruach HaTuma Avrim and Haaretz, that the spirit of Tuma I will remove from the land, still in all, that is something that Hashem is doing, if you will, from above. But you don't know if there could be such a possibility for it. But by going through Golus and eradicating the Golus, and in such a type of way, and this is going to be a core point that the Rebbe is going to explain, is that by transforming the darkness of Golus into Geula, so then the Geula is in such a way that it's not applicable in a change, because it's like the darkness itself agrees to become transformed. Whereas if the Eibishter would just remove the spirit of darkness, then it could be a possibility for Golus to still come about. So that's why we need to have the lengthy Golus to ensure that. And the same way we have to have the travels that were in the time of the Yidden in the wilderness, that had to go through the 49 stages and so on, that had to be, so we should be able to come into Eretz Yisrael. So the Rebbe explains further on the top of the next page, if the redemption would have arrived without the preceding service of the time of exile, would have been in such a way as blight on the sinismokim and afshorius of Golus. Still remains a possibility for exile. It's possible that the darkness of the other side should again ascend, bringen Yidden zu Chatoim, and to have bring Jews to do and to sin. B'meila, and therefore the result of that would have been Sugolus. It would have brought about the exile. Only through the avoid in the time of exile was durch ihr sein Yidden mahapech dem Choshech so'er. Through the time of exile, Yidden transformed the darkness to light. Is nit shaykh as der Choshech soll gaber werden. It's not possible that darkness should overcome. Because the darkness became totally transformed to light. It's a similar concept that it's brought down. The difference between the Yidden going out of Mitzrayim and the Yidden going out in the final Geula. Because when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, it says, Ki borach ha'am, the nation ran away. Whereas in the future redemption, it says, Ki loy b'chei pazim tetzeu, not in a rush shall you leave. And Chassidus explains the difference is that in Mitzrayim, the jail was still there. It's like someone that leaves jail. So if he leaves jail, but the jail is still there, he could still be imprisoned again. But if he leaves jail and the jail is gone, or the jailer is transformed to a friend, so then it's not possible for him to be imprisoned. That's a difference between the Geula that was then during Mitzrayim and the Geula of Mashiach's times, that the darkness itself will become transformed to light. In a similar way, it's not the exact same thing, but it still has a certain similarity. That when the Yidden first entered Eretz Yisrael the first time around, durch dem was the Knesses gekommen nach der Agdama from the Members Masois by Midbar, through the fact that the entrance came about after the introduction of the 42 journeys in the wilderness. Durch welche Yidden haben aufgetan die Hachna Biru von Nachash Sarava Akra, welche sagen Midbar, that they accomplished, they sublimated and they refined the snakes, the poisonous snakes and the scorpions that were there in the wilderness. Bedugmas the klippus midbar amim, which is similar to the klippus that are in the wilderness of the nations, meaning they were transforming klippus. In this battle given the Efsharis, it was nullified the possibility of the Knissa La'aretz soll zerstört werden von die Klippes from the Midbar. It's impossible that these klippes that existed then in the wilderness could not disrupt their entrance to Eretz Yisrael. Perhaps there were other klippes that joined the fray and disturbed the situation, but the klippes of the Midbar were completely eradicated. They were fine, and therefore we didn't have to worry about them. So in a similar vein, we have the goal is to ensure that we don't have to worry about any klippus from Mashiach. Yeah, Shleimer, we could say, as das is the time from them. This is also the reason for the fact was their seam from the Masois is given by Arbes Moya. The conclusion of all the journeys was in the plains of Moya. In other words, what we read at the end of last week's Parsha, that in the last pasuk it speaks over there, how they said they were there in Arbes Moav, and that's when Moshe Rabbeinu was going to tell them the entire Torah and so on. What's the significance of the plains of Moav? Well, in Midbar Gufa is the niedrigste Darge. In the wilderness itself, it's the lowest level. Niedriger afilu von Amoin, even lower than Amoin. Moav is Chachma the Klippa. Moav, Chassidus explains, is the wisdom of Klippa. Because it says May-Av, says that the daughters of Noach, one of them named her child Moyach, the word May-Av, from my father. Father is the level of Chachma. So Moyav is Chachma of Klippa, meaning the most difficult part of Klippa. Like Chachma is the highest spirit in Kedusha, so Chachma is the most powerful level in Klippa. And in them Gufa, and in this itself, it was Arvois Moyav. Arvois, in the simple meaning, means plain, but the Rebbe explains it. Arvois meloshen erev v'choisha. Arvois is in the word evening, indicating darkness. So you had the darkness of Chachma, the Klippa, was their final journey, their final stop before they could enter Eretz Yisrael. Und nachdem wie jeden am Machnier gewinnt top of the second column, wir war gewinnt euch die Klippe von Arbes Moab, after the Yidden subjugated and refined also this Klippe of the plains of Moab, since they given great to Arangin Eretz Yisrael, they were ready to enter Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe says a question that I mentioned before, that the Rebbe asked earlier in the Sicha, about the reason why in the beginning of our Chumash Devarim, he leaves out the information about Arvas Moed. According to this, we still need to understand that according to the inner meaning of the things, Farbos in Chilos Parshas Devarim state nor be'ever hayardein. Why at the beginning of Parshas Devarim does it just say that Moshe Rabbeinu told them Chumash Devarim? He told them the entire Mishnah Torah where he told to them across the Yarden, across the River Jordan. Und es wird nicht der Mann tafilun nicht betorah safa euch va'arves moyav. It's not mentioned, not even as an additional point, the idea that it was in the plains of Moav. Bibalt, as in Yon from Parshas Devarim, is the achana to the Knesset Laretz Kanalsiv Gimel, since the idea of Parshas Devarim is the preparation to entering Eretz Yisrael. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu gave them the Chumash Devarim. He was like inspiring them and relating to them what they have to do to be able to go into Eretz Yisrael. What's the shleimus ha'achon is the birur from Arvas Moed. Like we just now explained, the perfection and the completion of the preparation is when you totally eradicate the klippah. And the worst klippah, which is refining the plains of Moed. It should have been mentioned also the plains of Moed. So with this, the Rebbe is going to bring to understand this by an example from the future redemption that's also a similar question. We'll understand it by prefacing an explanation on the question in a similar vein concerning the future redemption in the loss of love. The time of them was maskir in Yitzias Mitzrayim oich lemoisa Mashiach. We say this in Haggadah. Chazal teach us that even when Mashiach comes, we still will mention going out of Mitzrayim, which is in Parshas Vayomer and Krishma. The reason why the third Parshas Vayomer is added to the other two Parshas of Krishma is primarily because it speaks about going out of Mitzrayim. And one would think that when Mashiach's times come, the miracles will be so much greater and so much more powerful. So perhaps you won't mention Yitzias Mitzrayim. Though the future redemption will be much higher than the redemption going out of Mitzrayim. So still in all, we will still need to mention going out of Mitzrayim when Mashiach comes. How come? Seemingly, what significance does it have to mention going out of Mitzrayim? Yes, Mitzadem, the reason why we have to mention it is what says, Mitzrayim. There's also an advantage in the Geula of going out of Mitzrayim in comparison to the redemption of Mashiach's times. Because by going out of Mitzrayim, there was the advantage of subjugating and sublimating the clip. Was the avoid of Niskafis Achres given Mitzrayim. The avoid that Yidden had to sublimate also their own clipper was specifically when they went out of Mitzrayim. Bald as the rise noch Yivem betokboy, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Perek Lamed Aleph and Tanya, that the bad was still in its full force within them. Ma'ashenkin loss of love as opposed to Mashiach's times. Bald as Dan is as Ruach Atum Avim in the when Mashiach comes, it says the spirit of impurity I will remove from the land. So there's no more iskafia. So since iskafia, subjugating klippa and sitra achra, has something, is a very powerful thing, and therefore we will mention it even when Mashiach comes to celebrate and mark that great thing of iskafia. So the Rebbe says a similar question to what we asked before. Tells of the Shaila, the question arises. The Baal says, in the avoid of fun. Since there is an advantage in the avoida of sublimating the Sitra Achra, is farvast vet men der mannen la'asad la v'yitzias Mitzrayim narba derech tov. Why, when Mashiach comes, will we just also mention Yitzias Mitzrayim? It's an additional thing. In other words, the main celebration and the main Yom Tovim, etc., will be about the coming of Mashiach. But we're saying, you know what? There's something to be said for Iskafia. Iskafia has an advantage over Ishapcha. Sublimating the Klippa has an advantage over transforming the Klippa, and therefore we will mention Yitzias Mitzrayim as well. You even need to bring a proof from a pasuk, since it says Kol Yemei Chayecha, all the days of your life. So as we say in the Haggadah, the extra word Kol Yemei Chayecha comes L'Havi L'Maisa Mashiach, comes to teach us that also the days of Mashiach we will also need to mention Yitzias Mitzrayim, which means from the fact that you have to bring a pasuk for this, this means that really I would have never have thought to do so. Why not? We just now explained the Skafia is such a powerful thing, so seemingly we should mention it without any need for bringing a pasuk. Kasha is nachgeras, so the question is even greater. Just like there's an advantage in the avoid of sublimating the Sitra Achra, is da euch am Meilen the avoid of Nisapa Sitra Achra. There's also an advantage in the avoid of transforming the Sitra Achra. But in the future, when the spirit of Tumah I will remove from the land, Hashem already removed the spirit of Tumah when Mashiach comes. So you cannot have neither sublimating the Klippa, or you cannot have the transformation of the Klippa. So the Shaila, the question arises: Vibalt as Yisrael Oir is Minachoisher. We know Chassidus always emphasizes this deeper meaning of the pasuk. It says that the greater light comes out of the darkness, and the Rebbe explains in the brackets. As dafke durch dem was mis koife oder mis mahapach the choishvat strachra, only through the fact that one subjugates or one transforms the darkness of strachra. Dafke durch dem vert a yisron and the oil, only through this becomes an increase in addition in the light. Is hayitachen? How does it make sense? As la'asad love it nit zayin da avoid was brings to Yisro, and when Mashiach comes, there won't be the avoida that brings to this addition and to this increase. So this is a big problem. How can we be lacking such a powerful extra light that would come out of transforming the darkness or out of subjugating the darkness, since Hashem will remove the darkness totally? That explains is the beer and them. The explanation of this is after tachlis ha'il is nit is. Let's skip over the parentheses. The inyan von oil kedusha guf. The ultimate ascent and elevation is the idea of the light, holiness itself. Was das der Leint noch in a hecheren Ort? Was is hecher von dem Ort was der Leint der Bira Choshe? This reaches a higher place that is even higher than the place that comes about in the refinement of darkness. In other words, like the Rebbe is going to explain, as is nor as b'chdei tzukum to them, to be able to reach this highest, most light, the light that is higher even than the transformation of darkness, that freer sein the birur achoshech und der yisna oivas vertuch them. The first has to be the refining of the darkness and the additional light that it comes about through it. Aber nachdem wie in der Eura schon bakumen der Yisrael, but after the light already received that additional power and thrust, let's say, wird nis alle und in noch a hecheren Ort, wo der Inyan von Choshech euch lachre abirot kin shaychas nit. It becomes elevated to even a higher place where the idea of darkness, even after refining, has no connection with whatsoever. In other words, as follows: as great as Chassidus speaks about the amazing quality and the powerful light that results from transforming darkness, that itself is only a stepping stone. It's not the darkness that we're interested in, and not even the light that comes directly from the darkness, but that light, that powerful energy of light that comes when you transform darkness, is a stepping stone to the pure light that's beyond any type of darkness whatsoever. Now, here the Rebbe is going to say in footnote 34 an amazing point. Based on this, and we're going to read some of the footnote 34 and some of the note. There's actually a note upon this note that really brings it home when it comes to the idea of Geula, how we're supposed to look forward to the Geula. He says, it's footnote 34, Lahoyer, to note, the Indians are Moisif, Gambat, Sphere, Vagaguim del Geula. Knowing this, that the ultimate light and the ultimate purpose is not the powerful light that comes as a result of transforming or subjugating the dark, but rather it's the light that follows after we got that powerful light that transformed the darkness. Knowing this adds to the looking forward and the yearning and missing the redemption. Because of the quality of the avodah of berurim in the time of exile specifically, there's room to make a mistake. We don't need to await the redemption, and especially it should be immediately. Why? Because by refining the sparks in the time of Golus, we're reaching this Yisra Na'od, we're reaching this additional light that comes out of the darkness. But based on what we said before, we can understand, but that's not the ultimate still. As opposed to what's explained inside the Sicha. That the refinement, the advantage of the refinement of the darkness and the additional light that occurs through the refinement of the darkness, that's only an introduction to the greatness and the quality of the avodah of Torah mitzvahs, that specifically in them is the desire of Hashem's being in His essence. So therefore, the great looking forward to it and the yearning and missing the future redemption should be immediately then. Because when Mashiach comes, will be the ultimate level of the fulfillment of Torah mitzvah. And then the Rebbe says that the even though in the footnote, he said, in the footnote to the footnote, the asterisk on the bottom, the Rebbe says that the Eibishter, even though he has a great desire and he has an enjoyment in the avodah birurim, so the Rebbe brings from Maimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he says, sorry, I didn't move this up. The fact, why do we praise the Eibishter? It says in the Haggadah that we praise the Eibishter that he calculated the end of Golus Mitzrayim and he sped it up and he ensured that the Eden should go out earlier. So why is it such a big praise for Hashem? Since Hashem has a great delight in the avodah of refining the sparks, and despite the delight that Hashem enjoys, the avodah that we are doing in refining the sparks, the Hashem he would forgo his enjoyment and still bring out the Eden, take the Eden out of Golus earlier. That this lesson and directive is also to Hashem. Skip the parentheses. The Mekiven Shachefetz Ta'atzmusi is bar. since the desire of Hashem's very essence, skip the parentheses, who b'shleimus the Torah mitzvahs, is in the perfection of Torah mitzvahs. Lachein tzarech liyas gamba darga d'Hakadosh Baruch Hu havitur al atayim darga zoom. So there also has to be in the level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He has to forego the delight that he has from the refining of the sparks. But Adrab, and just the opposite, Hashem should be Lamayr Lazaris Zagula, to speed up the redemption, to fulfill the essential desire of Hashem's very being, of Hashem's very self. And that is when we have the advantage of Mashiach's times. We're going to skip over a little bit to Oizai, the bottom of the first column. Pisa is verstandig euch. According to this, is also understood the Pnimis and Yonim in the inner aspect of what's going on. Was in Ascholas, Parshas Devarim, state nor be'ever a yard, and at the beginning of Parshas Devarim, all it says is across from the yard. It's very mont ba'arvas Moav. It's not mentioned the plains of Moav. Agam as durch den Birur von Arvas Moav verta Yisron Knisel Oretz, though through the refinement of the plains of Moav becomes an increase in their entry to Eretz Yisrael. They zum Madgish sein. Why does the pasuk leave out the plains of Moav, even though that's the lowest clip, as we said, it's the darkness of Chachma the Klippa, and that's what's being transformed, to emphasize as the Ikira Inyan from Knisa La'aretz is the main point of entering Eretz Yisrael is not the birur from Arvas Moav, is not the refinement of the plains of Moav, nor the kiyum mitzvahs atluyas ba'aretz, but rather the fulfillment of the mitzvahs that are dependent upon the land. Afal became still in all. B'shas es kommt zum zweiten Mal in dem Pasuk, a moisef euch be'eretz Moav. When it comes to the second time in the Pasuk, to add also, it says be'eretz Moav later on, b'dugmas was euch be moisef Mashiach, but in der Mannen euch yitzias Mitzrayim b'derech tafel, similar to the fact that even when Mashiach comes, we will still mention going out of Mitzrayim, but in an ancillary, auxiliary way to the main thing, the Gili HaKdusha Be'ever Yarden, the revelation of holiness across the Yarden. So just like in Mashiach's times, the primary thing will be the revelation of light, not the Iskafia, not the subjugation of Klippa, but subjugation of Klippa will also be mentioned. The same thing, the main thing that in the beginning of Chumash Devarim he says is Be'ever Yarden. But later on, he adds the words that Be'eretz Moav as well. Further in Oisches, the Rebbe connects this also with the Haftorah that we're going to read on this Parsha that we're going to read this week. Al Pikol and Al, according to all the above, and Oich verstehen the Sheiches from Tchilas HaParsha with the Siyam Haftorah, Siyam Mishpat Yibad, which we understand the connection between the beginning of our Torah portion that speaks about Evar Yarden with the conclusion of the Haftorah that Zion will be redeemed with Torah, with judgment, and its captives or returnees will be redeemed with Tzedakah. Bibalt as the Ikara Inyan from the Gula Sida, since the primary idea of the future redemption is that Tachlis Ha'ilyon Oyer V'Kedusha Gufa is the ultimate ascent in light and holiness itself. Therefore, is euch der Ikara Avoida durch welches wird kommen the Gula. Therefore, the primary Avoida through which it will come about the redemption is befrat echad in one aspect, from one perspective. It's not so much the refinement of the unwanted things, nor the avoida from limud Torah and kiyum mitzvahs. That's the main emphasis. The avoida of the study of Torah and fulfillment of mitzvahs. And he's soon going to contrast that and say that really the beginning of the Torah is speaking about seemingly the negative thing, and but what's going to be talking about in the Haftorah is the beginning is going to talk about the negative, and then it's going to speak only about the positive. And the Inyan is mudgish and siyam v'choysev The idea is emphasized in the conclusion of the Haftarah. In the Friedrich Psukim, in the earlier Psukim, it says, that I will refine your dross, your sediments. It says, I will return your judges like at first and your advisors like initially. Is by saying I will return them as first or initially. Madgish, it emphasizes as the Torah Shayftim built it, was saying instead of the unwanted judges, negative aspect of judgment that were there earlier, there will be worthy judges. So all of those points are all that is about refining the darkness. As opposed to the conclusion of the Haftarah, it's not mentioned anything untoward and anything negative, but rather, as it only speaks about Mishpat and Tzedakah main, was Mishpat main Torah. Mishpat means Torah, and Tzedakah is called some mitzvah. Tzedakah is also, like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, the general aspect of all the mitzvahs. The Rebbe concludes with a lesson for us. Now, top of the second column. It's verstandig deirav zu Yidden von der Mitzkin Deir. It's understood the lesson to the Jews of this last generation, this generation, the Lester Deir in Golos, the final generation in exile. As we bald mistake beim Siyum from Golos from Arvis Moav, since we're standing at the conclusion of Golos, of the darkness of Chachma of Klippa, the way he calls it, like Allah Simona from the Gemara, according to all the signs that the Gemara says, like my father-in-law, the leader of the generation, already testified years ago, as Medafner Zuk puts in the knep, all we have to do is polish the buttons. And immediately the Geula is going to come. Mashiach is standing behind our walls. Etc., etc. It's verstandig, so it's understood as Itzer das Trinherren Begoli. Now it also has to be felt in a revealed way. Not the Koshif and Golos Rachman Litzlan, not the difficulty of Golos, heaven forbid. Nor be mistake but Aver a Yarden, rather than we're standing across the Yarden. Mahalt by the Aliyah Tzarangin Art Yisrael, Begula Mitzah Shlema, we're holding by the elevation to enter Art Yisrael in the true and complete redemption, as Darpno Zain Imdu Hachin Kulchem, it has to be all you stand ready and prepared. That's all we have to do. And he says this is obvious from the fact of what took place when the Yidden went into Eretz Yisrael then. Madach has by the Achonis to the Bia to the Shoin in Eretz Yisrael. How if when the preparations for the first entrance of the Yidden into Eretz Yisrael, when Yidden zijn noch given Barvas Moab, when Yidden were in the plains of Moab, as Shoin gehört nor the Aliyah Shebazeh Be'Eber Yard, what was felt was only the ascent. The Torah did not mention Arvis Moab. The Torah mentioned Be'Eber Yard. Afal was Moshe Gevus as everything that reinführen Yidden in Eretz Yisrael, even though Moshe knew that he was not lead the Jewish people into Eretz Yisrael. Nit kukendik of Philosophal HaKadosh Baruch Hu Eschan Hashem, regardless about his davening to Hashem to enter Eretz Yisrael. Ubemela can sign as the Bia Lords with sign of Bia Nitzkis. Therefore, since Moshe would not enter, so there was a possibility, and that actually happened, that it would not happen, that the going to Eretz Yisrael would not last, because Moshe Rabbeinu did not go in. So can sign as the Nachot Weiter gaining goals, and there's a possibility for us to afterwards going into goals. And the Rebbe says, and the reason why that's so is because Moshe is entirely higher than Golus, and therefore, if Moshe would have gone in with them, there wouldn't have been a possibility for Golus. So let's skip to the paragraph afterwards. So al-achas kama v'kama b'sim Golus ha'achron, how much more so in the conclusion, this final Golus. When Mishrein durch the avodas habirurim, sorry, move the page. When Mishrein durch the avodas habirurim in Golus with all nisyonis, we already went through the avodah birurim in Golus with all the tests, bis to the Chevle Mashiach till the birth pangs of Mashiach, the Devarim HaMavilim, built in Misharim, Klal Filo Farnit Yidin. The shocking things that can't even be imagined, even non-Jews could not imagine, like talking that occurred in this generation and should never be and will not return the same tzara again twice. Is a davar pashat. So it's a clear and obvious thing. As Easter is Yidden stein be'ever yarden, that now Jewish people are standing across the yard, that Yidden are standing now across the yard. We're just holding this moment. We're at the cusp of going into Eretz Yisrael. We're at the threshold. Zusammen mit Moshe Rabbeinu kipshutim mamish. We're holding literally to enter with Moshe Rabbeinu. We are gebet mit philosophers Channa Hashem, like he asked in his tefillah, I begged Hashem, begula mitzvah shleimesh v'nachnar gals t'mishyach tzkeinu. In the true and complete redemption that will not be followed by golus, through Mashiach, and then Moshe Rabbeinu will arise, and the Chazal say that Moshe will be there and Aaron HaKohen will be there at the beginning of the Geulah. They won't have to wait for Tchias HaMesim whenever that will take place, but it will happen immediately. And since Moshe Rabbeinu davened to enter Eretz Yisrael, it says that tefillah of a tzaddik will always be fulfilled, the Rebbe says in the footnote. So therefore, he's definitely going to enter with us to Eretz Yisrael right at the beginning of the Geulah. So he says, was steht und wart ungeduldig, that Mashiach is standing and waiting impatiently. If the Rega, when wird auslesen Yidden von Golus, for the moment that he will redeem the Jewish people from exile. Was das can come and take it from Yad Mamish, this can come immediately. V'ad kedei kach, the Gemara sagt, to such a degree, how the Gemara describes how Mashiach is sitting and waiting for it to happen immediately, and let's skip over to the next paragraph. Valachas kam v'kama, how much more so? As la'achri the ganze avodah from Yidden behesem to bekoach tishmo, after the whole entire avodah of a Yid appropriate to listening to his voice, is showing Sicha as Mashiach kommt hayom, so it's already sure that Mashiach is going to come immediately, und nachmer, even more so, wie bald as Yidden haben sicher tshuva getan, since the Jewish people definitely did tshuva already, hatten the Avtacha psakt in Baruch, we have the promise and the clear ruling, as miyadin nigolim, that immediately they will be redeemed, he will not delay them even in an eye blink. Not even a wink of an eye. And since surely it's in a state of where they merited, therefore instead of Mashiach coming riding on a donkey, he's going to come in such a way that he's flying on the clouds of heaven. And the Rebbe says that this Sicha was said on Tisha B'Av, and on Tisha B'Av, this is already the time when Mashiach was born, and he reveals the Mashiach in every single Yid, and he's ready to redeem them, and therefore Mashiach must be here, because since any moment it can happen, it should happen, and so immediately, right away.
Amen.